Yeah, so the base of the oven I was explaining before, that can be made out of whatever material suits you better, so we're going to use pallets today. My favourite is using like a nice blue stone, a big chunky solid stone that's got a nice mortar in between it, so you can use lime plaster or cement mortar or cob mortar. And then on top of that, we're going to be doing this today, we've got a cob border which has its insulation inside. And then on top of that, we're going to sit our fire bricks, and that's sort of our base and platform that we're going to build the oven on top of. So the difference, does anyone know the difference between insulation and thermal mass? Explain that one. Hello. Okay, so the cob material and the stone material is what we call thermal mass, and the insulation material is like the bottles or the scoria or straw. That's an insulative material's got more air inside it, air pockets. So insulative materials will retain heat and reflect it back inside the room. Like if you're using insulation in a house, you're trying to keep a stable temperature in a house. And it's the same with the oven. It's stopping all the heat going outside and putting it back into the oven. And then thermal mass, which the cob is, which is like a more dense solid material, that's what we call a thermal battery. And that takes the heat and it actually stores it in the material. So that's why our oven stays hot for a few days after we burn it. So you actually want a combination of both thermal mass and insulation. So you get the oven hot, you store the heat in the cob, in the thermal mass, and then you surround it by insulation to make sure that that doesn't go out into the atmosphere, which cools our oven down. Does that make sense? Yeah. Cool. And then the last one I've got here just is about the arch. So that's our door form that Alex just showed you, and then these are little bricks that are surrounding the archway. So that's going to be the entrance to our oven. You can do anything you like. You can just cut a door and not have an arch at all, so it just looks like that. It just means that it's not aesthetically as beautiful. So this is just making it look much more pretty, basically. There's not really a lot of function to having more bricks outside. People ask why you don't have a chimney in these sort of ovens, because a lot of people see chimneys in them. You can, and we put, like, you can put an old fireplace flue in the top and form cob around it. The reason I don't like having chimneys, they would typically sit, like if it comes out here for the doorway, they'd sit there. They lose a lot of heat through them, so they get a really good fire burning quickly because the oxygen's coming in and helping it burn nice and hot. But then the heat escapes out of it. So sometimes we make plugs to put in the chimney and it makes it not as effective. So I like not having one, but you'll often see, especially those big ones at the Italian restaurants, they have chimneys in them, and that's just because they're burning a lot of fuel really quickly. They need somewhere for it to go. And because people say if you don't have a chimney out, you're going to get smoke in your face, but because of our ratios, you get a really efficient fire. You don't really get smoke. You'll only get smoke if you've over-smothered the fire inside or if the timber's wet. So if you've got a good timber source and a good fire going, you won't get smoke in your face while you're cooking.
Do you also get the second burn from the smoke? Like a rocket stove?
Yeah, so it's a really similar concept to a rocket stove. And when we do earth building courses, we usually do, on the first weekend we'll do a rocket stove, and then a weekend later we'll do a pizza oven so that you start to see how they progress. But a rocket stove is just like an L or a J-shaped cooking top. It's a very like rustic, traditional cooking style. And it's basically the way that the timber's burning is that it's burning down, going along the base of the chamber, circulating around, going back, circulating around, going back, and then coming up. So it's a really clean burn with a lot less smoke. And that's the same as what's happening in the pizza oven. That's like that little convection. Slowly down. Any questions so far? Have you built an oven before?
What was that?
Have you built an oven before?
Yeah.
One of these ones?
Yeah, we built one with Cam at Little Chase. Yeah.
At where?
At a little like Kearney festival at Sam.
Oh yeah, awesome. So that would have been probably the same formulas and everything. Yeah. Cool.
Does that formula have anything to do with the golden ratio?
It doesn't, but
yeah,
very cool. No, it's really close. And I've been asked that before, and I went and had a look at it. And I was like, oh, that'd be interesting. But yeah, it's not exact. but it is kind of like it's 63%, and so it's kind of looking at the golden ratio a little bit, but it's probably got a bit to do with it, and that's an average, so maybe we could try that one time. If it was done to the golden ratio, maybe it'd be like 10%.
Right to these guys.
Yeah. Got it wrong. Yeah, that's a good point. More questions?
Hey Dani, how are you?
Good.
Good to see you.
To make sure I've covered. So today we're going to do. So we're not going to build a base because we're just using these pallets. So we're going to build the bottom bit that's got the cob and the insulation. Then we're going to start to make the form to build the oven, and then we'll put the cob on top. We'll leave it tonight, and then tomorrow we're going to do. We'll cut the door and we'll dig out all the sand that's inside, which creates the formwork, and then we'll do the insulation layer tomorrow. And we'll put a bit of a mud coat on it, but I'm not going to finish it fully. We're not going to render it or put a roof on it today or this weekend, because I want you guys to burn it, use it, see if it's efficient, see if it's what you want, and we're going to wait until we move it into the exact right place before we do a nice render on it. So the render will probably not happen for a couple more weeks after you've used it a couple of times. So the render is like the more weather protective coat on top. And we usually do that out of line, so that stops the rain sort of washing it away or any sunlight damage or any cracking happening. But if you do that when the oven's still wet, which it will be after this weekend, it will crack as well. So we'll wait to do that in a few weeks' time, maybe a month's time. Sure. Questions? Okay. Let me feed her. It might take me like 10 minutes, and then you're all going to get muddy, so be ready to get muddy and have your drink bottles, and maybe we'll set up some tarps out there. Okay, she'll need a feed, so let's go over there first and we'll look at making the pot. Alright, Clay, bear with my brain here. So sand is, you can see the visual difference between sand and clay, but it's actually quite hard for people, including us, to find good clay and to identify it. So sand is a completely different ballgame to clay. Clay is not just thin, broken down sand.
Sure.
Mandy? Are you alright to do that? She's a bit clay. You might want to hold that under your foot. No nappy free time. Sorry, you can get the footprints. And then maybe just jiggling. She likes that. Thank you. I get distracted otherwise with my brain. So sand is basically like there's a big rock, and then it's broken down, and then there's gravel, and then it's broken down again, and then it's defined as sand particles, and then the smallest particle of sand is silt. Silt often looks like clay, and people get confused all the time, and often when we have clients for bigger building projects, we used to say you need this much clay, but we stopped doing that because people would often find heaps of silt and go to all this work with silt, and then we'd get there and realise that it's not a very good building material. So the reason that silt is very different to clay is silt isn't sticky. So it feels like clay and actually feels really nice because it's like when you wet it, it's really fluffy and it's really, really soft, and it looks very similar because it's the same colouring and everything, but it doesn't stick. So this stuff is actually, it's got a bit of clay in it, the darker stuff, but it's quite silt heavy. And if you put it on your skin, we'll do it later, but if you draw like a line on your arm or something, it will dust off when it's dry. Whereas the clay, which is, this stuff is much more clay heavy, it's much more sticky. And when you put it on your skin, it's a bit harder to, like it leaves a bit of a, not a stain, but it stays on your skin, like the coloration. You can obviously wash it off, but silt's very different. Silt is like, more like sand than it is like clay. Does that make sense? So the lighter the clay, the better it is for things like pottery and renders and finer work. And the darker it is, like dark browns, dark oranges, it's better for building. So that it's just a strength thing and a particle size thing. So this clay is verging on too light. It's what we use for the mud bricks over there because it's got a lot of white mixed through it. And so it's a bit brittle, and when you make bigger bricks out of it or cobbles, it will sort of crumble a little bit easier. So we are going to mix a little bit of this silty clay in because the silty clay has got some good dark clay in it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's a little bit of there's no exact science, it's a bit of an experiment, and that's why we like to do the tests. So if we had time to do testing, we'd identify our materials and we'd make some balls and some bricks out of the materials first, and then we'd see how they dry, we'd drop them from heights, we'd check their cracking, and then we'd decide on our ratios based on that. But yeah, we don't have the time. And clay is just lots of different minerals mixed into it, so it's not broken down rock. Although clay can turn back. Any questions about clay? I know it's a bit confusing. It's all good. So when you're building a cob house, it's exactly the mix that you're going to use for the pizza oven. That's exactly the same way that you'd make the building material to build a cob house. Let's go over there then, unless you need more. Tell me what you see.
I don't know, it feels like this is dry and this is finer, like way finer.
Yeah.
Like the top down.
Yeah.
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 But I couldn't figure out what you meant by it kind of jiggles or something.
When it's wet.
Oh.
So I'll show you that. It's wet, but good memory though. So they call it what we want to use in any earth building. So if you're doing a round earth house, a straw bale house, plastering, cob building, anything, you need sharp sand. So to explain that, if you think about, I know you said it looks like the beach layer, but if you rub your hands like this sand, both of them, and usually the sand that you get at the landscape supply, is a lot more sharp, which means if you can zoom all the way in, it's like an angular, like it's got more jagged and flat edges. Whereas wash sand, which is beach sand or sands that you find on riverbeds, because it's had water running over it, it's really round. So you can imagine zooming in, it's like a marble. And you want sharp sand because when you think about an earth building, you need it to be really, really solid and all the pieces fit together like Tetris. So if you were using beach sand, because often people say, why can't I just get beach sand or sand from a riverbed? It's often too rolled, and you can use it, but it makes a weaker building material as well. So you could use it for a pizza oven, but if you've got access to sharper sand, use sharper sand. Sharper sand comes unfortunately from quarries, or if you can dig it up on your property.
Yeah, can you find it anywhere, like if you can't get a beach and rivers, like where would you?
So if you have sandy soils, in my old property in Melbourne, we had 120 acres and it was all sand, and so it was like 90% sand in the soil. So what we dug up in that was, that's what we used. Pardon? Then so you can't usually, sorry Nanny, you can, Nanny, if you want to put her in a bouncer, she might be happier in there, sorry. You can't buy clay from a quarry usually, but it's very hard to buy clay. The only way you can buy clay when they've had very fancy earth buildings and they want their walls to be pure white and very, very perfect, then we buy bags of clay, which is what you buy for pottery. That's an extremely expensive way to build. So you want to get clay from the ground, and the way you do it if you don't have it on your property is to find like a dam. Often we'll call it council and say who's building a dam at the moment, and then go and find those people who are doing that and ask if they can have their clay. Or when I've done pizza ovens in the cities, like I used to do heaps in Melbourne at community gardens, we just ask developers who are building apartment blocks, you know how they dig out lower, go in there and there's usually clay. Like it depends, but often cities aren't built on sand, except for the Gold Coast. So that's usually how you can find it. You can call up a local earthworks company, like the guy who works here, Glenn. You could call him up if you just had a house fire and say, "Are you digging out any properties that have a lot of clay? Do you reckon you can ask the owners if I can come and get some buckets of it?" And they usually say yes, because it's just a mess on their property. Yeah. So for the most part, most properties have, if you've got a bit of acreage, you've got some clay usually. Like our property was quite rare, so just be mostly sand. But it's good because it meant we weren't really buying any material. Sand's a bit more expensive, and it's mine. And our old property that we bought had an illegal quarry on it, so it was already dug up for us. It was really good.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
Any questions about the sand side of things?
Gonna have the smoothest.
Those are 10 litre buckets over there. It doesn't matter how many litres your bucket is. It's like what we were saying before with the mugs. It's just the ratio. You could use 1 mug of clay and 2 mugs of sand, or you could use 1 wheelbarrow of clay and 2 wheelbarrows of sand. It doesn't, as long as they're all the same thing that you're using. And buckets are just easier. I like the 10 litre buckets because they're easier to lift for one person. Like if this is filled with clay and you're building all day, it's not very good for your back. And so when we're doing building workshops, we have 2 people lifting 20 litre buckets, or just one person can do a 10. Yeah, so this is good. So the way that we can sort of tell that it's good is its texture. So it's like nice and smooth. Often clay has a bit of rock in it and stuff. If it's hurting your feet because it's got too much rock, you can put it through a strainer or like a bread tray or something. But for cobbing, you don't need it to be really fine. For renders, you need it to be fine. So what we'd do if we were doing our finishing coats, we would then screen this through like chicken mesh and then through even smaller mouse wire and then down through 1mm screens, depending on the quality of the finish.
Well, for a pizza oven, if you had a lot of rocks in there, would they not like start to pop and explode and stuff?
For a pizza oven? Can't, like, yeah, if there were too many rocks. So we do like a first stage screening, but gravel size and smaller I don't really worry about. But it's a good point. I was looking through my photos last night of when we first moved here, and he used to hang out in my bed all the time.
Oh,
And now he's like feral wildcat.
wild cat.
So this has been mixed with quite a lot of water, which obviously when we're looking at ratios, this is not 1/3 pure clay because it's got quite a lot of water with it. So it's probably actually only around maybe 15% clay, but that's good. And that's what we're sort of going for. The reason I say 1/3 to 2/3 is that it's very rare that you'll get pure clay with no water that's nice and soft to mix through. If you do get that, then you have to dramatically reduce the ratio. So then you'd have to do like 15% clay to 85% sand. So that the only time that would ever happen is probably if you were buying bags of clay because you just couldn't get it anywhere. But I've never met someone in 10 years of doing this who built a house out of bought clay. I don't think you would. Well done. Questions about that clay? Okay, so it's nice and fluffy. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up 2 tarps. We can probably do it here now. It's better to do it closer. Do you think it's going to get hot and sunny again? It's a risky game.
No idea.
I think it's a pretty nice day. Pretty cloudy.
Okay, well let's just do it here. We can drag them over if not. We'll set up 2 tarps and we'll do, I'll just take a little bit off the top of this because just to make it 10 litres so that they're all the same. And we'll do, actually let's do a double mix. So we'll actually fill this bucket up so that we've got 20 litres. So we'll do a full one of these, 1 full one of that, and 2 full ones of that. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's still 1 to 3. Yeah. 1 point. Yeah, so we'll need, so 20 litres of that sand, 40 litres of the white sand, and 20 litres of that clay. Does that sound good? And there's heaps of us, so we're not all going to be able to jump on the cob at once because you don't need that much cob for the pizza oven. But
We want to make a big mix of that ratio in another half RDC.
to make,
Or we're
well,
just going to dump it all on the top.